knows what I'm saying. He understands. Don't you, Pop? Goddamn right he does.
So in this video, I'm going to try and explain why I find people like Candace Owens and Dave Rubin particularly gross when it comes to grifters on the right wing, and why they rub me the wrong way in particular. Now, of course, I guess I should say this, I am a straight white guy talking about a black woman and a gay man, and I'm going to talk about how they sell out their own people, as it were. So I can understand why people might think, I don't want to hear some brochurelist, as people like to say, talk about these issues, but I feel like being a good ally to these communities is calling out people like this without saying like, oh, it's not my place because I'm not, you know, African American or I'm not gay, so I shouldn't be saying anything. But some of you would know I come from an Irish background, and I've heard obviously awful stories of people like my grandma being treated really bad when they came to England. Obviously, a lot of my family were Fenians back in the day, treated awfully by the English. And I can kind of relate in terms of I can think about my past and think of my ancestors and think about how they would feel if people in their communities sold out to the British, started talking about how it's all the Irish fault, you know, they're just awful, all the Irish Catholics' fault, they're just awful people. You know, it's not like the British are oppressing them, it's just because their culture is awful and that's why they, you know, kill British soldiers and that's why they're terrorists, because they're just animals, basically. It's not because the British are oppressing them. And I know what, you know, how they would feel if people sold out like that, and a lot of people did sell out to the British like that. So I'm going to use that sort of knowledge of my, you know, ancestors to inform this discussion. So because I know more about him, let's start with Dave Rubin. So Dave Rubin was a liberal who used to appear on the Young Turks. Now, I watched Young Turks since about 2011, so I always thought he was an okay guy. He just, you know, came with totally centrist, left-leaning centrist, rational takes and stuff. He didn't seem so bad, to be honest. I even subscribed to the Rubin Report when he left because I didn't know about anything that had been going on in the background that later came to light. And he seemed okay, you know, at the start he had people like Jimmy Dore on, he had some more left-leaning people on, and he seemed okay. I didn't really mind him. And then, of course, he went down this libertarian, classical liberal, whatever you want to call it, rabbit hole, where he has essentially become a conservative, and it's obvious he has done that for money, and he's also funded by Koch groups, you know, Koch brothers and everything. And what has now happened is that Dave Rubin platforms some of the most awful people in the sort of social media politics space, including people who are extremely anti-gay. So Ben Shapiro goes on his show, says to his face, you know, your whole lifestyle is an affront to my beliefs and my religion, I think is awful. And Dave Rubin just sits there and takes it and talks about how great a guy Ben Shapiro is. He sits there and lets this guy spew homophobic propaganda while then saying how great he is, right? He gets on other people, you know, I forgot who this guy was, who then found out Dave was gay afterwards and started shouting about how I shook a gay guy's hand. He couldn't believe it. He was so disgusted by it.
Stephen said, they hate Dave Rubin because he's a gay man with the wrong opinion. Dave Rubin is gay? No! He got a husband? I did not know. I was in his presence. I didn't know. I shook his hand. I sat down with him. Why did y'all tell me before I went on his show? Oh, Stephen, why would you send me this? Oh my God, Stevie, you ruined my day.
And that's an instance of someone like Dave completely selling out to do these things. And on a personal level, he's selling out because he's a gay man who is married, and he's sitting there platforming these awful people who would, if they got into power, would take away his rights. So Dave is from a globally oppressed group, or groups, the LGBT community, right? And only in the last couple decades have they made massive strides in Western communities for better rights, including Dave's right for gay marriage. And who were the people pushing back against them? The exact same people Dave platforms and spreads their homophobia. And in his own way, he's undoing loads of the work the gay community and their allies have done in getting people to accept being gay as normal and give them the same rights as everyone else. And he frames it as a marketplace of ideas, but he sits there, doesn't offer a rebuttal, doesn't say that, you know, I really like my rights, I really like my right to be, you know, married as a man, which I couldn't do before, and if people like you were in power, I couldn't do that. He completely sells out everyone, and that's why I find him pretty disgusting, because he has benefited from the fighting and from the deaths of people in the gay community and the LGBT community who have fought their whole lives, fought oppression, fought violence, People have even died for this, like Harvey Milk. And then he's turning around being like, let me platform the exact guys who are fighting against us and let me spread their message to my 1 million followers. And that's how much I don't care about, you know, where I'm from or my rights in this country, right? And that is why I find it particularly gross, because he is selling out the rest of the LGBT community by doing this. And we see today, he might say, oh, homophobia doesn't exist as much. We've all accepted it, can't we just move on? And then you have loads of attacks against the LGBT community. I'm thinking recently in Britain, those 2 women who were beat up on a bus after they wouldn't kiss when this gang tried to force them to do it. And obviously there's still loads of other attacks as well. That's just one thing that came to mind. So I find it particularly gross that he sells out these people. Now let's get to Candace Owens. Now Candace Owens is another grifter. She isn't bright at all, just like Dave Rubin. So it's obvious everything she is doing is just for money. She goes in front of Congress and says white supremacy isn't an issue, despite it massively rising in the West. You know, white supremacist terror is the biggest terrorist threat in the West, particularly in America as well. She goes in front of the world, says to the politicians this doesn't exist. And what do the Republicans do? Oh, look, a black woman says it doesn't exist. She says we're not racist. That must be true. And that is so damaging. Just like Dave Rubin, someone who's from a group of people who don't get the same chances in life because of the American government is inherently racist. The American institutions, wherever they be, whether the legal system, everything like that is institutionally racist. She completely sells out everyone once she's got a position of power and privilege. That's the same with Dave Rubin. They get the power, they get the money, they get the privilege, and they get that by selling out the oppressed groups they come from. Now that doesn't mean these two face oppression necessarily. I'd be surprised if Candace Owens has never had a racist comment directed at her, and if Dave Rubin ever had a homophobic comment directed at him, but let's just say, you know, they haven't. But even if they haven't, they don't recognise that it's so hard in these countries to be from these communities. Of course, we've done better in getting equal rights and civil rights for everyone, but it's still hard, especially the African American community. And even in Britain, the black community, if you see how small the proportion of black people who go to university in this country compared to how many black people are in this country, it's so small, because obviously they face institutional racism. And this helps keep them in poverty and helps keep them minimised and keep their voices minimised. And that is the same in America, but to an even worse extent, because the legacy of slavery is still so strong. So for someone like her to go up and say, you know, white supremacy doesn't exist, this whole thing with racism, it's way overblown. Essentially, you know, well, Martin Luther King was saying that people used to tell black people, pull yourself up by your bootstraps, you're just complaining about oppression when there isn't any. Essentially what she's saying right there. So she completely is selling out the African American community. And it's so damaging when the right wing have so much power in America, when the government is run by a bunch of white supremacists and they get someone like her and say, look, we're not racist. This black woman says we're not racist. We're not homophobic. Look, this prominent gay guy says we're not homophobic either. It's just liberals crying. It's the oppression Olympics. It's all this garbage. We haven't actually done anything wrong. And I think in America's case specifically, it has such a problem with recognizing its racist and homophobic past. I think it's even more damaging because I think a lot of the racial issues in America and just general awful issues to do with civil rights is because America is a country founded on genocide that won't actually admit it's founded on genocide and things like slavery. And people like Trump can say Andrew Jackson is his favourite president and that's not controversial. And they can talk about all these atrocities America did and they can rehabilitate it, even things like the Vietnam War, which is a total genocide. But think of how it's sanitized in America. They have such a great ability, the American government and American conservatives, to really rehabilitate anything they want. And people like Candace Owens and Dave Rubin help in this. And I think people like myself are kind of hesitant sometimes to really take them to task because they're like, you know, obviously they're from these communities. Am I really going to speak for them as a white person? Am I going to use my privilege and take the words out of their mouth? But I think we should all, when we see people from oppressed groups really doing a disservice to the groups they come from and really setting the clock backwards, I think they should be called out. Now you can say you're a white guy, you're a straight guy, what do you know? Where's the discrimination you face? Don't talk for the gay community, don't talk for the African American community. Well, I do appreciate that point of view. At the same time, the discrimination these people face is quantifiable by statistics and data. It's not just, you know, a general sense. It's not like I have to come from those communities. Obviously, I don't understand it as well as those people. Obviously, it hasn't happened to me because, like I said, I benefit from white privilege. I can't even imagine what it's like to be discriminated against because of who I love or my skin colour or anything like that. And by me saying these people are oppressed, I'm not saying, oh, they're so helpless, look at me, I'm white and they're all oppressed, they can't help themselves, so let me be a white saviour, come in and really help them. That's not what I'm saying. Obviously, historically, the fight for civil rights has been led by the black community. There has been white allies, but let's not minimise that it's been majorly led by black people, and the advocacy for LGBT rights has been led by people in those communities. It's not about these white saviours, but I'm trying to be a good ally to these groups by calling out people like Dave Rubin and Candace Owens and say how damaging their rhetoric is to these groups and how backwards it can set them, because the people who are against them historically will just point to them and be like, you see, we're not that bad, see, you're just whining about stuff. You don't need civil rights, you don't need any of these things, because look, these two people are absolutely fine with it and they're saying we're doing a good job of all these things. We're not racist, we're not homophobic, because look, this gay person says we're not, and this African American woman says we're fine as well. But yeah, that just sums up why I find these two particularly gross. It's not going into massive detail, I'm not picking out things they've said to other people, but just in a general sense, I absolutely hate people like this, and it just makes me feel pretty sick that they're selling out so hard and they're really peddling the viewpoints and the narrative of the people who want to uphold the status quo. Anyway, let me know what you guys think in the comments. Please leave a like and maybe subscribe to the channel. If you want to find me on social media, follow me at The Cavernacle on both Twitter and Instagram. If you want to check out my Patreon, that is just in the description, and thanks to all my patrons, I'm always super grateful. I also have a WordPress blog and that is in the description as well, so please check that out. And if you made it this far, thank you for watching.